Alright, so far we've covered energy, food chains, food webs, carbon cycle, water cycle, population size, biotic factors, abiotic factors, primary succession, secondary succession, and greenhouse gases. Well, actually not greenhouse gases, but greenhouse effect. Now, this time, we're going to talk a little bit about environmental effects on biomes. That includes a little bit about greenhouse gases and about invasive species. So basically, how the ecosystems change, whether due to natural processes or through human interaction. Last time we ended with the greenhouse effect and how energy comes from the sun, gets absorbed by the surface, or bounced off, re-radiated as a lower wavelength, usually heat. That heat gets absorbed by gases inside the atmosphere and then re-radiated, some into space and some back down towards the ground to keep us warm. Now notice this particular greenhouse gas, CO2, carbon dioxide. If you remember the carbon dioxide from the carbon cycle right here, it is part of the cycle. You take carbon dioxide, you make the various organic compounds, gets transferred between different animals, the ground gets decomposed, moves to the ocean, where you have the carbon cycle occurring in the ocean. Some of it gets dropped down to the depths and stored, some of it's stored in the ground, some of it stores in the living things. But humans can have an impact on this cycle, whether through burning fossil fuels and releasing that stored up carbon back in the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, or starting forest fires, or clear cutting bits of the large swaths of the Amazon rainforest and other parts of other rainforests to clear cut it for farming. That again, a lot of the carbon dioxide is stored in the living trees, and when you burn them down, that carbon dioxide is released back in the atmosphere, which increases the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which causes the atmosphere to be able to absorb more heat and therefore insulate the earth even better. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad. There's natural fluctuations in the temperature on this planet over the geologic time, but the question is whether those changes that we as humans are doing are adding to this planet's ecosystem, whether they will have an effect or not. But whether it does or not, the important key point is that those environmental physical changes to the environment can affect what the ecosystem turns out like. For example, some of you might know that the Sahara Desert is spreading. All of you should know that in Africa there's a large desert called the Sahara Desert, but it has been spreading and slowly taking up and desertification of northern Africa. This is a process due to the amount of rainfall. Temperature there has remained fairly stable over time. Changes depending on what biology is there and what is able to actually reflect the heat and absorb the heat. But the main difference from in the past to the present is the amount of rainfall that occurs there. So the amount of water that is available has been decreasing over time due to weather patterns. They're not quite exactly sure what's going on yet. It's still a subject under study, but, pardon me, cat. But we do know that due to the decreased, hello kitty, amount of rainfall, that there's no longer enough water to sustain the life around there, and you get a shift from a savanna ecosystem to a desert ecosystem, because again, there's not enough water to sustain that. So that physical change in the environment has resulted in a change in the entire ecosystem. However, sometimes the changes in an ecosystem could be biological rather than physical, such as in cases of introduction of invasive species. Now, we introduce alien species all the time, especially in landscaping. They bring in a flower or a hedge that they think is pretty, and it stays there and it remains in the yard. However, the difference between an invasive and an alien species is all invasive species are alien, but an invasive species can take over their ecosystem. We have that in the fairly recent past, such as the casuarina down in South Florida, the Australian pine taking over, and it's not suited for down in Florida because they don't have a deep enough root system, so that during tropical storms they grow really tall. And during tropical storms, because of that lack of roots of an in-depth root system, it's gonna fall over, and usually falls over in houses, is brittle, snaps. You get a lot of damage because of them. So they're trying to get rid of those. Another one is a lot of people like to keep large snakes, and sometimes if they're in South Florida, they don't have to move and can't take them with them. They release them into the Everglades, and some of them survive, some of them thrive, and some of them get big enough to be able to swallow an alligator whole. Now, this picture was taken from the Everglades National Park around sometime when I was still in grad school. I remember that. I can't remember what year exactly, but basically what happened, snake and a python got in a fight. Both of them were hungry. The python managed to defeat the alligator and swallow it whole. However, what they think happened was the alligator, well, it still has, if you look at the picture there, it still has its claws there. They think the alligator managed, or after the snake swallowed the alligator, one of the claws poked holes in the gastrovascular cavity, and that caused sepsis, and the python died because of that, and eventually the gases built up and the python popped, and you get this result. Yes, the python won, but the alligator got the last laugh. The story of the python and Everglades is still working itself out, so we're not quite sure what the end result will be. The rangers are still trying to control the populations, but Everglades is huge, it's hard to get access to, so there are lots of refuges for pythons. So they're probably going to be there for the foreseeable future. A more extreme example of how invasives can take over an environment is, look at this picture. Notice all that leafy green. Well, all that leafy green is just one vine, the kudzu plant, which was imported as a decorative plant, and then it took off like wildfire. It found a very suitable environment. Nothing ate it, so it started growing over everything. Trees, vines, bushes, whatever. And it basically overgrows them and kills everything it overgrows because it takes up all the light. Eventually it'll knock down the trees because the trees die, and with all that weight, it's going to knock it down. So again, humans have been introducing alien species to new environments for a long time now, ever since we've had a lot of travel. It could have started all the way back to the Vikings, who knows? But in the cases where humans travel, we bring things with us, things that we're not always aware of. Good example would be rats. Rats didn't used to be everywhere, but they like to go into ships. And when ships dock in areas where rats aren't, and sometimes rats can escape, go to the island, find a pristine environment, and take over. Same thing here. Kudzu brought in on purpose, and found a great environment. Nothing was a predator to it, so nothing can control it, so it just overgrows everything. And that's when an alien becomes an invasive, is when it becomes a problem, by starting to take over and changing the ecosystem. Of course, there are many ways that we have been trying to contain these problems, trying to fix these problems, but a lot of it costs money, a lot of it is very difficult, and it takes time and study to do it right. Alrighty, folks, so take-home message: in ecosystems are affected by factors both physical and biological, and humans have played a role in molding ecosystems, whether on purpose or an accident as a byproduct of our actions. Alright, take care, hope you have a good day, and hope you enjoy the video.